So really quick, before we get started, our contact information, if anybody has any questions or if I go too quickly over anything, I have a tendency to talk very fast. So if you have any questions after the fact, our email address is mediatools@google.com. That email goes out to me, my colleague Vanessa Schneider, who is actually in the back of the room right here, and a few other people on the team. Also, we have a website, google.com/mediatools. So everything that we're going to be talking about today is covered on that website, including a whole bunch of stuff that we're not going to get a chance to get into today, unfortunately. No. The topics that we're going to cover today, we're going to be looking at advanced search. Who here has used Google Search before? Yeah, one or two. Yeah. We're also going to be using a tool called Google Public Data. Has anybody seen Google Public Data or used Google Public Data before? No? Okay. Well, we're learning new things. Google Image Search. Has anybody ever searched for an image before? Yeah, a few of you. Excellent. So we'll show you some techniques and tips on how to better leverage your use of Google Image Search so you can get more professional results back. Also Google Trends, which you guys have probably seen before, a few of you. Yeah. We'll talk a little bit about that, and then there should be time for questions afterwards. As we're presenting, I've got roughly 45 minutes worth of slides. So if you have questions as we're going along, don't be afraid to raise your hand, but there will also be some time at the end there, and you can also grab me outside of the session. We can get super nerdy about a lot of this stuff if need be. So if you were to do a search for something back in 1998, this is something very similar to what you would have seen. This is what Google looked like back then. And there's actually an Easter egg right now, so if you were to type into a search bar Google in 1998, you're actually going to get results looking very similar to this. And obviously things have changed quite a bit since then. We have a little exclamation point in our logo back then. We were very, very excited about what we were doing. We've actually calmed down a little bit since then. We got rid of the exclamation point and actually added an enormous of additional information in there instead. What we're looking at right over here is what's called the knowledge graph. And depending on if you're looking at the English site or a Hebrew site, this is going to switch either left or right, obviously, because the left to right reading or right to left reading. But what the knowledge graph really represents is kind of all of the progress that we've made since 1998. The idea here is providing information back to you that's very, very relevant and that's very, very current. Oftentimes, it's answers to questions that you may not have even thought to ask in the first place. So as I'm visiting a new city, or visiting a new country, I'll oftentimes put into the search bar the name of the city just to find general information about it. In this case, we're looking at Tel Aviv. All of these links down here below, oftentimes you'll find a little blue URL link, which allows you to click on that. It's going to open up another search bar and provide you additional context or additional detail about that particular topic. If you're searching for a person, a place, or a thing, and now we're looking at the English site here, if you're searching for a person, a place, or a thing, that knowledge graph is going to change accordingly, right? So you're going to get additional bits of information or detail depending on what type of thing that you're looking for. In this case, we're looking at Barack Obama. You've got an image search here. That last slide that we were looking at, it's pulling results from image search, from Google Maps. It's also providing other relevant sites or relevant things to look at in the area. In this case, because we're looking at a person, it's providing you additional details that might be interesting to you, like his parents, his siblings, his education. And if I wanted to know more information about any one of those topics, I can just click on that. Where before, what we may have had to do was open up several browser windows or spend additional time searching for each individual thing. Now it's all kind of collected in one location for you. It's also telling me here that he's on Google+, and it's showing me recent posts by him, or most likely somebody on his staff that's posting to Google+. So if you're interested as a journalist or as a researcher, who's a journalist here? Who's a student here? Who's just hanging out? A couple? Yeah. So if you're interested in using Google's products and you're interested in reaching your audience and finding ways for your audience to find your content, one thing that you might want to consider doing is having an active presence on Google+. It's integrated now with a lot of different products at Google. So even if somebody is doing a search just on Google Search, there's a likelihood that your content, your current content, might show up within this search bar over here on the side. The idea behind a lot of this is really, this knowledge graph is a culmination of all of this different information out there. So if you think about how the internet works, it's not just strings of numbers and letters and things just kind of floating around in space out there. There's actually connections between those people, places, and things, much in the same way that we interact with the world around us. When we're thinking about something and we're trying to create meaning on something, It's not necessarily those individual items that we're thinking about, it's those relationships between those. So the knowledge graph is really kind of the representation of how Google is now approaching search and approaching information. There's 570 million people, places, and things that are out there on the internet. That's a lot of things. There's also 18 billion defining attributes and connections, and obviously that's a lot more kind of connections than you would be able to go through in a simple search. So really the idea behind a lot of this is, and this is a quote from one of our founders, and actually you guys, there's seats up here if you want to move up here to the front. The perfect search engine, ideally the perfect search engine should understand exactly what you mean and give you back exactly what you want. I actually think that a better way of saying this is that it should give you back exactly what you need. If you think about your activity online, and especially when you do a search, oftentimes you're in need of something, whether that be answers to a question, whether that's to calm you down a little bit about something that you're worried about. We're going online and we're actively participating online for answers, right? And we're not a perfect search engine yet, but we're getting there, and that's kind of really what we're working towards. There's a lot of things that happen in the background when you do a Google search. So if I were to look for a person, a place, or a thing, it's pulling from those millions of different websites. It's using different search tools and search refinements, which is really what we're going to be talking about today. What tips and tricks can you use to help elevate your activity on Google search to that of a professional, as opposed to just an average user? There's spell check, which I'm a big fan of. I'm a terrible speller, so spell check makes me at least sound somewhat more intelligent when I'm communicating with people, at least when I'm typing. Feature triggers, these are options that allow you to just type things into the search bar and get answers back very quickly. For instance, if I just wanted to type in an equation to a math problem, it's going to provide that answer right back for me, and instead of having to open up a calculator or open up another an application on my phone, for example. Feature triggers like weather. What's the weather in Tel Aviv today? Do I need an umbrella tomorrow? Is it going to rain next week? It understands conversational speech and it gives back those answers to you. And a lot of you, who has a smartphone? Yeah. So most of you will probably have the ability to use voice search right on your phone now as well. So you can type in, you hit the little voice search button, you put a query into that, and it provides an answer back for you and understands your voice. Search customization as well. So depending on where you're at, whether you're logged in or not, and what your search history has been, these results that are being provided back to you in the search bar may change, right? So when you do a search, and let's say, for example, I want to take advantage of some of these search refinements. We'll just go through a few of these examples now. One of those might be finding the definition of a word. In this case, we're looking at loquaciousness. What is the definition of loquaciousness? I think it is a really good definition of me as an individual. In this case, it means the quality of being wordy or talkative. So the way I found this was just instead of opening up a dictionary, anybody even own a dictionary anymore? Dictionary? Yeah, mine's holding up my coffee table. Define, space, and then the word that you're looking for. It's going to provide back a dictionary definition right within those search results. There's Paul peeking through the window there. Everybody say hi to Paul. Another example. Let's say, I think a lot of times we have a tendency to put large amounts of information into that search bar, like a small paragraph or a small essay, and then we're kind of like, oh, the results I'm getting back are not exactly what I was looking for. Well, a better way of doing that might be refining your search. And I would say that when you're approaching Google search, start broad and then narrow your search down to something more specific is a pretty good technique. One way of doing that is using quotation marks. And what quotation marks does is it indicates to Google that everything within those quotation marks is one search query. So as opposed to looking for to be or not to be as just a bunch of random words, which may or may not provide me a result back, I can put those in quotation marks and it's only going to look for that very specific search query. One cautionary word about that, over specificity or being too specific is sometimes not a good thing. So if I were doing a search for Alexander Graham Bell, you all heard of Alexander Graham Bell? Yeah. If you were looking for Alexander Graham Bell and you were putting that within quotation marks, in this case, Alexander Bell, that might overlook Alexander G. Bell or instances of Alexander Graham Bell. So what I recommend doing is trying it with and without quotation marks to kind of zero in on exactly what you're looking for. This is kind of, if you think of this as a scalpel, it's a very, very specific tool to narrow.
What's new over?
I'm sorry?
What's new? Google used to do that for years.
You're on top of the curve then. That's great. Yeah, there's a lot of search refinements and techniques that are, there's a website that I'll be showing you in a little bit that kind of go through a lot of these, but if you're used to Boolean operators, which is kind of a blast from the past, or if you're used to using different types of modifiers, not everybody knows those, so you should definitely share with your friends. Here's another example. Let's say, for example, I'm looking for a recipe. I'm doing a recipe for a Mexican dish. I'm looking for salsa. And in this case, I want to find salsa recipes, but I'm allergic to tomatoes. I don't want to include tomatoes in my recipe. If I go salsa recipe minus tomatoes, it's going to provide me back results for salsa recipes minus tomatoes. And this works for all types of things. So if you wanted to narrow your field a little bit, narrow your search, let's say I'm looking for protests or riots or demonstrations, but I don't want to look for protests or riots in Thailand or in Venezuela or in Kiev, right? And I wanted to narrow that. You could add in protests or riot or demonstration minus Kiev, minus Venezuela, minus Thailand, and just see where else protests or riots are going on. Here's another example. We'll keep talking about food because I haven't had lunch yet. But in this case, we're looking at another recipe. We're looking for a guacamole recipe to go along with my salsa, right? I could go to a website like simplyrecipes.com. I could go sifting through and like searching for a recipe for guacamole. And in this case, I would find this recipe called perfect guacamole. I might not agree with that. I might have already made that. Didn't like it that much. I want something different. I can look for other websites that are similar to this using a modifier related. So related : and then the URL for the website. Google's already indexed all of these sites. It's going to take a look at key indicators or keywords, and it's going to look elsewhere on the web to find other sites that are similar to this particular website. This comes in particularly handy if you're looking for stock images, for example, or if you're looking for data. You're looking for other data sets. And the website that you're looking at, or stock music, if anybody's ever looked for stock music, it's kind of like the worst experience ever, trying to find good music. But if you're looking for other websites that are similar to a website that you found, this is a really easy way to kind of hone in on that and zero in on that. Here's another example. Let's say I know the exact website that I'm looking for, I just don't know where on that website the content is that I want to find. Has anybody ever been to a government website to look for information before? Was it an exciting and fun experience? Yeah. In the US, the websites are always terrible. There's been recently this whole thing, you might have heard about it, like the Affordable Health Care Act in the US, and everybody's like, oh, you can go sign up for health care. And it's like, here's all this information that's available. And the site sometimes worked and sometimes didn't. An easy way to get information off that site, or for example, the IRS website, which is another fun experience in the US. I just want like one document, which is locked up in this particular website. Instead of digging and searching, going submenu by submenu, and wasting my time doing that, I can let Google do a lot of the heavy lifting for me. So I go site : and in this case, we're looking at the New York Times website. I'm just looking for the op-ed section. So site : NewYorkTimes.com. And then at the beginning of that, I can just do op-ed and leave a space. So Google will automatically crawl that website. It's already been indexed. It's going to find just that op-ed section, and those are the results it's going to provide back to me in the search bar. If you guys have a computer or a tablet and you want to follow along with this, you can try these out as we're going along. All these things should work. Here's another example. So if I wanted to combine these two, and I think this is really where these search modifiers and these search refinements shine, if you combine a few of them together. So in this case, I know I want to do a story on the Mars rover. However, what website would I want to look at? Well, a good website to start might be the nasa.gov site. So I'm going to go to nasa.gov, site : nasa.gov. I'm going to leave a space, and then within quotation marks, I'm going to put that search term Mars rover. Now, if I weren't to use the hashtag Mars rover, if I just typed in Mars rover without the quotation marks, what it will probably do is provide me back a lot of results within the nasa.gov website where Mars and rover are just kind of anywhere on the page or in the header, right? Which isn't exactly helpful. So using those quotation marks, it's going to show me examples where Mars and rover are side by side. They're connected and they're in that order. So again, you think of this as a very sharp scalpel, a really tight refinement tool. If this is giving you not the results you want, try it without quotation marks, and then try other words. Sample around a little bit until you kind of zero in on what you're looking for. Do we have anybody working with data or data visualization here? Infographics? Yep. Oftentimes, there's a term that's been floating around lately. It's called data journalism. This is a new way of thinking. I'm sure some people at the conference today will be talking about it. I would say that within the next year or two, maybe a little bit sooner, everyone in the room will, in some way or another, be a data journalist, taking a look at data, figuring out ways to visualize that to help tell your story, to help give additional context to what you're writing about, or hopefully making it more clear to your reader to understand about a particular topic. Oftentimes that data is locked up, unfortunately, in PDF format, right? Hopefully sometimes it's in a spreadsheet, so an XLS format, an Excel spreadsheet, or something like that. Instead of digging and digging and digging through websites, one way of doing this might be to use the file type modifier. So you could go, in this case I'm looking for population Tel Aviv, file type, colon, and in this case XLS, Excel spreadsheet. And all of the results that provided back to me here are XLS files, where somewhere within the somewhere within the document, the word population and Tel Aviv is located. Now again, as I was mentioning before, using those quotation marks might be an even more, a better refinement tool. So instead of just using population Tel Aviv, if I encapsulate with that in quotation marks, it's only going to look for instances where population and Tel Aviv are right next to one another, right? To provide me a more accurate result or a more accurate document. And I'll just note that this works with almost every file type you can imagine. So if you're looking for a PDF or a PowerPoint presentation, let's say you just want a high-level overview of a particular topic, this might be a really good technique to get that information pretty quickly. You guys use hashtags? Hashtags? All right. If you were curious to know what a hashtag meant, Catterday was recently, what is today, Sunday? Saturday?
Monday.
Monday, oh my. All right, a couple days ago it was Saturday. In this case, Catterday, you guys familiar with Catterday? Catterday. It's my favorite. You take a picture of a cat and post it on Saturday? Catterday? All right. Let's say Olympics. We'll stick with something simple. So if I wanted to know information about the Olympics, or if I wanted to see what other people are posting in relationship to this hashtag Olympics, in this case it's Olympics 2014. Well, it actually provides me additional information here because it's such a popular term. It's an event that's occurring. Google looks at this and it says, oh, you probably want additional information about what's going on in the Olympics, perhaps scores. Perhaps you want access to the official website. You want to know what the schedule is that's coming up. But more importantly, down below, and unfortunately this is cut off because of the size of the slide, but it's telling me, well, here's hashtags from Instagram using that hashtag Olympics 2014, or from Twitter, or from Facebook. So if you're posting your tweets or your Facebook posts or your Google Plus posts publicly, you're making them publicly available to people for people to view, and someone does a search for a hashtag, there's a good likelihood that your content will then show up within a normal search here.
What's a hashtag?
What's a hashtag? It's a really good way of tagging your information so that if you're posting on social media, other people can see that and say, oh, that is part of this larger conversation. So in this case, we're talking about the Olympics. So if I was posting something about the Olympics, I might want to use a hashtag Olympics 2014 to indicate to other people that are seeing that online that, oh, this is part of this larger conversation as opposed to just being a random tweet. Does that make sense? Yeah, all right. Hashtags. Public data. Anybody seen this tool? Google Public Data? All right, we're learning new things. That's good. So in this case, what I could do, like I did before, I could look for specific data sets. I was looking for XLS files, looking for unemployment information or population information in Tel Aviv. Let's say I wanted to look for unemployment rates in Colorado. Well, I could also just as easily type into that search bar, unemployment rate Colorado. And it's going to pull up additional information about that particular search. So in this case, it's providing me a little graph telling me about unemployment rates in Colorado, which is where I'm from. It's also showing me California and Washington. It's giving me another little knowledge graph over here. It's showing me the state flag. It's showing me a map of Colorado, a little snippet of information. It's also providing me additional information related to other searches that people have done that are related to this search term, unemployment rate Colorado. And this is kind of just like the first entry into Google Public Data. You could click right down here, and it might be a little bit hard for you guys to see. It says sources included, US Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it says that right down here as well. So it's telling you where that data set is coming from. But let's say if I wanted to explore this data a little bit more, if I hit this button right here, it says explore more, it'll then give me the opportunity to dig into this data set a little bit further. Now this is Google Public Data. You can reach this by going to google.com/public data. And actually guys, if you want, there's seats over here if you want to sit down. You could go to google.com/public data. You can also search for a particular data set. like unemployment rate Colorado, and click Explore More. There's a couple different ways to get into that. You could also just type into your search bar of choice Google Public Data, and it'll pull up. And this is what this looks like. Now, what Google Public Data is, a good way of thinking about this, is a library of data sources. So all of this data is being provided by third-party data providers, right? So it's like the World Bank, the IMF, the Census Bureau. There's a lot of different resources that are being provided here. And the way you might want to think about it is Google is really just kind of the librarian. It's providing access to this information. It's showing you where to find it. But it's not really digging into it. It's not really telling a story about it. As a journalist or as a researcher, that's really your job, right? To do something with this data and tell the story with it. So one way of doing that is to search for a particular topic. So if I go to Google Public Data or google.com/public data, and I look right up here, it says search public data. Now, I think the tendency is sometimes people are like, oh, great, I'm going to now type in Tel Aviv, or I'm going to type in Colorado. The problem with that is it's going to super narrow down your search. It's not going to provide you a ton of information. The better way of doing it would be to type in a topic, so population, gross domestic product, fertility rates, whatever that might be. And then it's going to show you, based off of the list of other options that are here, which data sets provide that particular type of data, right? Once you've found that particular data set, then you can dig into that and explore it in a little bit more detail. And I'll show you in a second. We'll bounce out of my presentation. I'll show you how this actually works. But I just want to show you a few slides here to give you an idea of what's possible. So when you first come to Google Public Data, it's going to show you this little block of information here, which you can actually turn this off. But it gives you examples of how to visualize this information, different options or different ways to visualize things. It also provides a whole list. There's just 2 of them here, but there's literally hundreds of them down below of different data sets. And you can imagine those as just those books in the library, right? Once you become familiarized with these different data sets, you'll know when you come back, especially if you're on a deadline, which data sets will provide what types of information you really want to look at. So I would encourage you, when you first go to Google Public Data, explore around a little bit, check out the different data sets, see what kind of information is available in them. I'm going to use the World Development Indicators, mainly because it's the first one in the list, but also because it's the one I'm the most familiar with. So let's say, for example, I've started with the data set. I'm going to select World Development Indicators. I'll just click on that. It's going to open up this next page. Now, when you come to this page, this is all going to be blank, right? There's no data here yet, because I haven't really narrowed or refined it in any way. The next step would be then selecting the type of data that you want. And the World Development Indicators provides an enormous amount of information around a lot of different topics. So in this case, I was just curious, as I'm often curious about, is what is the situation with the internet in a particular country, wherever I'm going. So this is my current trip that we're going on. So Germany, France, United Kingdom, Turkey, Israel, Ireland. And what I clicked on was I looked down into infrastructure and I looked at fixed broadband internet subscribers. And what this tells me is that there's this huge, and this is not terribly surprising, right around 2000 to 2003, there's this huge uptick in broadband internet subscribers, which is telling me that there's a lot of people who are getting access to high-speed internet, which is not terribly surprising. I can narrow this by different countries or different regions. So depending on the type of modification that you've done and what type of data set you're working in, you can get very, very granular, sometimes down to a state level. Sometimes you can only go down to a country level. So it depends on the data set and what you're looking at. But with a few clicks, this allows you to visualize information. And this is something that you could attach to an article. You could share this via social media and use this as a way to get people interested in a topic. It provides a really visual way to look at a particular chunk of information. Here's another example. So in this case, I looked under environment and I looked under CO2 emissions per capita, which is all very dynamic view. So I'm looking at from 1960 to 2010, what CO2 emissions are per person, per capita, in these various different regions. So here's Germany, and as you can see, the data set only starts like right around 1990 or so. So depending on what data is available, your graph might look a little bit different. If you end up with like a short tail like that, that just means there's no data provided in this particular data set beyond that point.
And this data was taken only from the World Bank, right? Yeah,
this is just coming from the World Bank. And you can always see where this data is coming from. It's probably hard to see down here at the bottom, but World Bank, and it says it was last updated on January 10th of 2014. What I would recommend doing, usually when working with data, take a look at a few different data sets and compare them across one another. Each data provider has different restrictions about their data acquisition. You know, there's a lot of different variances that you might be encountering. So to make sure that you're providing the most factual information, I'd compare them across one another. But yeah, so we're taking a look at this. This is World Bank public data. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on here, especially in France, around CO2 emissions per capita. So I would be asking myself, you know, what was going on in France during the 70s and in Israel during the 90s that would cause these huge spikes and changes in CO2 emissions? It could be a lot of things. And you can actually pull a lot of this information out via these data sets. Was it deforestation? Was it automobile ownership? Was it industrialization? You know, there's a lot of different key indicators that you can look at to help tell this story, right? Let's say that line charts aren't your thing, or maybe this isn't just the best way to visualize this. Sometimes different visualizations work better than others. What I would recommend doing is checking out these little icons up here. In this case, if I click on this icon right there, it's going to provide a bar chart, right? So I can very easily revisualize this in a way that makes it easier to understand. And really, that should be the end goal always, right? Your user should be able to understand this data more clearly.
Is there a way to cross-reference on one chart from two different data sets?
Not really. So that's the only, yes and no. Let me actually back up. So within this tool natively, you can't pull in multiple data sets and compare that data across one another. However, what you could do is you could download this data set, find the other data set that you're looking for and download that one. And then there's this option here of uploading my data sets. So basically, you've married these two data sets together, or let's say you've already created a data set that you want to use this as a tool to visualize very quickly. You could very easily do that. And if you click on this button, it's going to open up another menu. It's going to say, where is the data set located on your computer? You're going to find that and upload it, and there you go. Or you can just do a side-by-side comparison. One thing I also want to mention here, and I'll show you this in a little bit, this little icon right here, if you click on that, it's actually going to animate this graphic over time. And this bar will move from 1960 to 2010, and these bars will move up and down accordingly. Now, if you're on social media and you're sharing things, or if you're posting things within your article on your website, I would almost guarantee you that an image, especially an animation, or even possibly a video, will capture your viewer's attention more readily than just plain text. So if you're looking for a really easy way to just kind of capture someone's attention and get them to slow down for a second, a visualization like this might be a good way to go. You can select this little button right here. It's going to give you the option of selecting this URL. This allows you to then share this via social media or embed it into your site. You can also take the HTML and literally embed the entire graph right within your article. Now, you could just as easily do a screen capture of this, and that's fine. That's totally legitimate. I would just make sure that you're including the data providers down here below. But what I would encourage you to do is give your readers and viewers the opportunity to interact with this data, right? Today, it's all about engagement, right? Or keeping people on your page longer. So if you give them a way to play with this data, and let's say I'm from the US, and it's like, this is all fine and good and very interesting to me, but I want to know where the US stacks up along with this, right? In addition to that graphic, put a little caption down below and say, hey, if you're interested in finding out more information, click on this or click on that. Give people a little bit of information about how to use this particular tool. It will only keep them on your page longer, right? Okay. And actually, we'll just bounce out. Anybody have any questions on that while I'm switching out of here? Can anybody see how this might be useful for something that they're working on?
Yeah. That sort of thing, I mean, from my experience, having done marketing material as well as PR, that sort of stuff always comes in handy.
Yeah.
It helps me to actually get the right information to the right people.
Yeah, sure.
When they need it. Without it, you're just spraying and praying.
Yeah, just making stuff up.
Well, that's the answer. But from a journalist's perspective, that information is really vital.
Yeah.
Because where we're standing now, so much information that's out there is spam.
Yeah.
It's public relations stuff put out on PR Newswire that's paid for and it's out there and it infiltrates all the news sites. there's nothing you can do about it. To get real information, to really get to the heart of your story, you've got to get data.
Yeah.
No access to data, no story.
I completely agree. And I think one of the beautiful things about Google Public Data, you know, and thinking about it as a library of information, I think is a really good resource, or a really good analogy. You know, here are these hundreds and hundreds of different data sources, and they're coming from all over the place. A lot of times these are NGOs, these are third-party data providers, government agencies, census bureaus. So having an understanding of data, having an understanding of the value of data, and being able to compare these across different data sets, I think is really, really key. It does one of two things. It either helps validate you as a journalist. So someone who's reading your article says, oh, this is verifiable, this is where this data is coming from, and it helps lend credibility. Or it just gives you a better understanding of these larger topics that are just sometimes hard to understand without looking at them over large periods of time. So in this case, and again, so here's this gallery of different types of visualizations that you can do. And as I mentioned before, you could just type into the search bar, and in this case, let's look for population. It's going to show you different data sets where population information is located. And it will help you narrow further from there. The other way of doing this is you could just go to the individual data set, and let's just use the World Development Indicators. I can then narrow from different categories. So if I wanted to look at health, for example, and I wanted to look at, let's see, let's look at this one. Community health workers per 1,000 people. Now it's going to tell me down here, it's saying, oh, this chart needs more information. So it's telling me that I need to refine this particular data set further. So that is pointing to this section right here. It's telling me, oh, okay, I need to narrow this by different countries. Let's select just a few random ones. There's China, New Zealand, Venezuela. Let's look at Middle East and North America. There's Israel. Not all of these have data sets available for them. So, you know, it'll warn you when that actually occurs. Well, it looks like China is really the only big one here. We have a couple little data points here, which aren't really that helpful. So what I might want to do in this case is bounce out to a different data set to see where else this information might be located. Let's look at one that's a little bit easier. Let's look at environment, agricultural land. That's always an interesting one. This is over the entire world, which is giving you a lot of interesting information. It looks like agriculture really ticked up right around the 1990s. If you're noticing that there's like kind of a flatlining of your data down here, try unchecking the world, and then that'll provide you a little bit more information. As you can see, it gives you a little bit more of an indication that China has been ramping up their agricultural land while the US has been reducing it. We've been putting strip malls in everywhere. And then let's say, for example, I wanted to narrow this data set. I really wanted to just kind of look at this crossroads right here. I could then narrow this date range and kind of hone in on exactly what I was looking for. And I can slide these back and forth as need be. How I mentioned before, you know, if I just wanted to switch this over to a bar graph instead of a line chart, just clicking on this icon will allow me to do that. And then if I hit this little play button, it's automatically going to animate those over time. Again, it just makes it a very easy way to then share this information with other people. And if you have a specific height or width that you're working within your website, you can just easily go in and you can adjust these height and width modifiers within the HTML to make sure that that fits exactly where you need it to. So that's Google Public Data. And we could spend an entire session on that if need be. But if anybody has any questions, yeah?
Small data centers, is it useful? Like if I want to learn, for example, how many people in the world are interested in biblical Hebrew, which is a specific narrow search.
Sure, yeah.
Will it help me, or do you have an alternative solution?
So the trick with that would be finding the data set that that information would be contained in the first place. So having a resource and understanding who might be collecting that data would probably help a lot. In that case, what I would actually look at, I would show the first technique that I was showing, not Google Public Data, but I would actually look at something like this to see who has data sets that are available with those particular type of keywords. Or if you've actually collected the data yourself, then that makes it a little bit easier. You can actually upload that data set using Google Public Data. Start here. If you're not finding the results you're looking for, then I would bounce over to Google Public Data. Type in those keywords, like in this case, which topic were you looking for?
Just an example, Hebrew biblical.
Yeah, so I would type in those keywords up here, right? It might be tied to literacy rates. It might be tied to a few other things like that. That will tell you what data sets might provide that information, and then from there you can drill into those data sets and help visualize that. It's actually a really good example. I'd be interested to look into that one. Okay. Anybody else have any questions on that? All right. So let's talk about images for a second. Who here has looked for an image online? Yeah? Who here has looked for an image online that was free of copyright? Yeah. Who here has used an image that was not free of copyright anyway? Yes. As a photographer, as well as somebody that works at Google, one of the things that I really appreciate is when a journalist gets in touch with me and they say, hey, I really liked your photograph. I'd like to use it in this article. May I use this? And usually I'm not able to answer my email fast enough, so they end up using it anyway. So what I really appreciate beyond that is when they send me a URL link to the article where they use the image. So at least I can show my mom, and I can say, hey, they used my image. Now, I provide most of my imagery online free of use. So it's Creative Commons, it's open source, you can use it for whatever you want, just don't modify it. Like I spent a lot of time color correcting that. I don't want somebody turning it and making it all weird. Now, one way of digging into images, you could just go to Google Image Search. And you guys have probably seen this before. Now, this has changed a lot recently. There's a couple tools that I just want to direct your attention to. Has anybody seen this button right here called Search Tools? Have you used this before? This is a really great refinement technique. So if you click Search Tools, it brings up this additional bar down here. And in this case, I'm just looking for landmarks, Israeli or landmarks in Israel. Right? So I typed in a very basic search query. I can narrow these by size. So if I just want the largest images, I can narrow them by color. Let's say I'm looking for historical imagery. I might just look for black and white images in this case. I can narrow it by type of image. So am I looking for a JPEG, a PNG, whatever that might be. By time. Am I looking for the most current images, or am I looking for images that were uploaded in the 1990s, right? So again, it gives you different ways to kind of zero in on this. It also gives you this ability to look by usage right. So usage rights, I think, is a very, very key term here, right? If you look, not filtered by license, labeled for reuse with modification, labeled for reuse, and so on. So as a journalist and as a researcher, the ones that you should be looking at are labeled for reuse, or labeled for reuse with modification, or maybe labeled for non-commercial reuse with modification. So if you're not selling ads against it, it's probably fine. Again, always best to ask the photographer if you have time to, or at least give them a heads up. Most photographers aren't going to be like too awful about it if you're using it from a journalistic standpoint. Yeah?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you put watermarks in your images? Do you find that helps at all?
See, that's a very good question, and I've grappled with this issue a lot over the years. I used to have this really horrible watermark that I put on the bottom of my thing. It was like this really nice Helvetica. It was my name and like the thing, and it was great. And then people just crop it out at the bottom. Yeah. So it's like, this is really wasting my time, and it's really not doing much. So I changed my licensing first of all, and then I have another technique which I'm going to show you in a minute, which allows me to chase down people to see who's using my images without permission. And there are different techniques. Unfortunately, not a lot of tools available with Google that allow you to kind of like safeguard your imagery. This is just going to be an issue with digital technology as long as it exists, unfortunately. Yeah. As a rule, though, just as a side note, I don't put watermarks on my images anymore. I feel like it detracts from the image more than it actually prevents people from using it. And I just take a little bit of extra time to hunt people down to see if they're using my images or not.
If you were a professional photographer, though, you would possibly have an issue with that.
Yeah, if I was licensing these images or hoping to make money off of these images, which I tried to for a while, but then I realized that was kind of a loss leader, yeah, I might think differently about it. But even Getty recently, they just provided all of their images available free to use for journalists and things.
What's the difference between the tools actually available here on the main page and those available by the advanced source settings?
It's a good question, because that's the next slide. Well, no, 2 more slides. Hold that thought. It's also available in multiple languages, so if English is not your first language, you're searching in Hebrew, this whole thing will automatically switch to accommodate. And as you can see, everything's on the right-hand side instead of the left-hand side. And I would also pay attention to translate as well. So if you're searching in different websites, but you're interested in seeing how this reads in Hebrew, you can always let Google automatically translate that for you, and it actually does a pretty good job with English to Hebrew translation, from what I understand. Next slide. So as he was mentioning, advanced image search. So if those search tools that we mentioned a second ago aren't advanced enough, and you really want an even finer tooth comb to kind of find images you're looking for, advanced image search would be the next step beyond that. And you can find that just by going to advanced image search. Now, this is what advanced image search looks like. It's not exactly the most sexy website in the world, but what this allows you to do is go in and narrow by even more refinement techniques. So it gives you the same basic one. So image size, it adds in image aspect ratio. So is it 16 by 9, is it 4:3, is it portrait, or is it landscape? It allows you to search by color, by type, by region. So it gives you an additional way to search by specific region. So is it just uploaded in Israel, or was it uploaded in the US? Site or domain, so you can search within your own website. I actually have a horrible time finding photos that I shot myself. Someone was like, oh, I like that really great beach photo that you took the other day. And I'm like, I don't know where that is on my site. So I can narrow that by a particular website or type of site, so .edu, .gov, .org, whatever that might be. Safe search, very key if you're at work or if you just want to make sure you're not getting in trouble for looking at naughty pictures. Safe search will help narrow those search results to prevent inappropriate imagery to show up. File type, again, and then usage rights, and it actually gives you a few additional options to look at to narrow by different usage permission rights. So in this case, free to use or share, even commercially, modify, free to use, share, or modify even commercially. So it gives you just a little bit more control over what you're looking for. Has anybody seen this icon before? You go to images.google.com. Has anybody ever clicked on that? Oh, good. A few of you have done that. Also, voice search is available. If you have a mobile phone or on your desktop now, you can even do it. If you search by microphone, if you have a minute later on, hit that microphone and type or ask for it to search for the world's image of the world's smallest monkey. It's actually probably the cutest thing you've ever seen. It's very, 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 very cute.
Don't try it if you're Israeli.
No?
Doesn't understand my accent.
Oh, yeah. So dialect and accent sometimes is a little bit tricky. Yeah. In this case, if you clicked on this little camera icon, it does something, and it actually pulls up this additional bar right here. And this kind of ties into what he was mentioning before about like watermarking your images, or how do you track down your imagery and seeing where else it exists online. So that's one way of using the tool. Another way of doing it, let's say you take a picture of a bunch of people, 3 of them are celebrities, and then this random person in the image that you don't know who it is. How do you find out more information about that person? Or let's say you take a picture of a building or of a mountain, for example. How do I find out more information about that particular image? Well, this allows you to search by image. And you could take the image URL from that photo, or if you had that image on your computer, you can upload that image and let Google take a look at that image and see if there's other images that are similar to it online. And if those relationships and connections are strong, it'll give you additional context about this particular photo. So in this case, I have a photo of a celebrity on my computer. I'm not quite sure who this is. I want to find out more information about this person. I could take this image, I can upload it, search by image, and it's going to provide me additional context and information about this particular person. Now in this case, what it's looking at is like, here's this image that was uploaded a minute ago, and it's going to say, oftentimes you'll get a thing up at the top, it says, images related to, or similar to, or did you mean, to help refine that. If you click on that, it brings you to this page. It's showing me, this is my photo. This is a photo of me from a while ago. It's a photo of me with a tiny hat. That's not me. That is a gentleman that I took a photo of in Germany. He's a rock and roll guy. He's very handsome. He has nice hair. But since I took that photo, it's saying that there's a relationship between me and that image, right? And then this guy over here, that's not me. His name is also Nicholas Whitaker, however. So if you're searching for somebody online, you find all kinds of horrible things about them, and you find that his name is Nicholas Whitaker, it's probably him, it's not me. So just to be clear. It's also showing my website, my Vimeo page, my Twitter account, my LinkedIn account, and so on and so on. Right? So with just this image, it's able to pull up a lot of these different relationships and connections to other things that are available out there on the web. And I encourage you guys to try this with like people and places and different things. Yeah?
Sorry for interrupting.
No, not at all.
If I don't want this engine will find this information about me or about anyone, how can the average person can avoid these kind of searches?
The easiest thing is to not post things publicly. So if you're posting on Facebook and Twitter and all these different things, you're posting public photos out there, it's making it pretty widely available for the internet to then search. And there's other ways within specific websites that you can kind of hide different things so that it doesn't allow Google to index those things. But that's like a whole other conversation about webmaster tools, and we could get into that. But there are ways of doing that. The biggest thing that I would say is just be wary of what you're posting publicly online and making available.
I think the best answer is to hide in the jungle.
Yeah, yeah, just don't go online. Yeah.
You know, but notice that when you search for faces or pictures of people, most of the time, if the picture's not online, exactly that picture, it won't find anything.
Sure.
So I would like to know how much work is being done with regards to facial recognition and all these.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm not too savvy on the facial recognition end of things. If there's not a whole lot of connections that are already made between an image and like what's being published online, it makes it really difficult to make those matches. Sometimes what you'll find out, as you probably notice, if you upload a photo of a person with the same color shirt on as like dozens of other images that are out there, you'll often get other images that look kind of like that person but aren't actually that person, which is not terribly helpful. It works better for people that are well-known or that have a very large presence online. The reason my image works so well is that I'm very, I post constantly online. I have a very large presence across many different social media platforms. So when I upload an image, it comes up very quickly. So I'm kind of going the opposite direction of what you were asking. I'm kind of just putting myself out there as much as possible. So yeah, we're still working on it, but it works really well for buildings and mountains and things like that too. Yeah.
If I have a printed picture of you, do you have the ability to find more information about you?
Like a printed photo?
Yeah.
So if I were to upload that somehow, do you mean?
No, if I have a newspaper or somewhere a picture.
Oh, I see. So if it was published in print and then you want to find...
Yeah, or any kind of picture.
Yeah, I mean, that would be an interesting one to play around with. I mean, ultimately you'd have to scan it somehow and then upload it. But if there are other similar images of that online, there's a good chance that might actually show up. I'm actually going to try that because I've actually not tried that before. It's an interesting.
It's working.
Yeah.
I tried.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh,
If
cool.
you're reading an article, you don't know who is the person, and you do the same thing.
Take a little picture of it with your phone, upload it. Cool. Yeah.
You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, so in 5 minutes, I'm going to tell you everything there is to know about everything else in my presentation. One thing that I would just note too, thinking about other file types and other things that might be available online, sometimes an image is not a photo, sometimes it's a diagram or a sketch of something. So as a research tool, when you're trying to find additional information about something, think about searching for diagrams of those things. So in this case, who knows how an earthquake works? Yeah, not a whole lot, maybe, I don't know. Earthquake diagram, if it exists out there in the world, somebody has uploaded a diagram of it. And doing a search for a diagram, in this case earthquake diagram, will give me a lot more interesting detail about what is actually happening when an earthquake occurs. 2 different websites that I would just mention to you, google.com/inside search. This will give you a really good understanding of how search works, what's going on behind the scenes when you type something into a search bar. Also, a lot of these tips and tricks that this gentleman apparently knows, but maybe you guys aren't familiar with, you can actually find a lot of that information in there. Also, power searching with google.com, this gentleman, Dr. Dan Russell, has gone through and given 2 different tutorials. Each of them are about a half-hour long each, and it'll take you through step by step by step about how to think differently about search so that you can become more of a professional with search as opposed to an average user. Now, very quickly, I just want to mention Google Trends in the last few minutes that we have here. Google Trends is a really powerful tool that allows you to get an idea of what people are thinking about. You can think about it as like putting your finger on the pulse of what people are searching for. And if you think of your own search behavior and what you're doing when you go online to search for something, it's oftentimes what you're needing, what you're wanting, what you're concerned about, what you're afraid of, and so on. And it's often very, very current. Things happen in the real world, you often then go and then search for more information on them online. So as a research tool, as a way to figure out what my headline should be, what keywords should I be using in the body of my article, what should I write about tomorrow? I think Google Trends is a really fantastic way of kind of getting an insight into that. There's 3 separate tools that are a part of this, the Google Trending Now, the Top Charts, and Explore in Depth. And what it allows you to do, in this case charts, it narrows it by different categories. Trends, it gives you roughly the top 10 searches in any particular region on any given day. If you want more information about any of those, you can just click on it and it'll open up additional information. And then Explore in Depth is really where I think the strength of this tool is. It allows you to compare up to 5 different terms across different times and different regions. So you can really, in a granular way, kind of zoom in and get an idea of what people are looking for. I'm just going to flip through a couple more slides, and if we have time at the end, I'll flip back to that and show you a little live demo of that. It's also available on mobile, so if you're on a mobile device or a tablet, you can just as easily access Google Trends from a mobile phone. One last tool that I'll talk to you guys about too, thinking about YouTube as another search engine. So it just happens that Google owns YouTube, so it makes it very handy, but it also happens to be one of the second largest search engines next to Google Search itself. So when you're thinking about images and different documents that are available online, also think about videos. Oftentimes that's really where people are getting their information from. So if you wanted to get an idea of what people in Malaysia or the United States who are 55 to 64 years of age or older were looking at, and you wanted to compare that against other cities or other countries, this is a really powerful tool to do that. It's called YouTube Trends. So you go to youtube.com/trends, that'll give you this page, and then you're off and running. Definitely a fun way to play around with that. I've just been told that I only have 30 seconds left, so I unfortunately won't be able to do a demo. However, if you want more information, you can always get in touch with us. I would definitely recommend checking out our Google Plus page. In this case, google.com/plus, Google for Media. A lot of tips and tricks being provided up there, as well as updated information about products, as well as examples of other journalists using these techniques around the world. Share your content with us. We want to share that with other people and let them know what amazing work Israel is doing with our tools. Also, our website that I mentioned earlier, google.com/mediatools, this is what it looks like. Everything that we just talked about is just in this one section called Gather and Organize. There's an enormous amount of additional resources available on here. And this is our contact information if you have any other questions. Thanks, everyone.